All right. Okay, so tonight's live is going to be 12 biases that harm your decision making and how this correlates with mental health. So we'll go ahead and get started with, hi, I'm Jamie. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's degree in substance abuse of a master's degree of Christian counseling of substance abuse and addictive disorders. And I got my license at Arizona State Prison Kingman when I was an addiction counselor. I am no longer an addiction counselor, so everything we say here tonight is just an opinion and an open discussion. Thank you so much for the heart me. Leslie, I am going to get you your gift card. I'm going to get your information from you in your DMs later tomorrow, okay? So don't let me forget because I got to try and get that done tomorrow. I'm having like an off day today, so that's why I wasn't done today. Anyway, so hi, my name is Jamie. Like I said, I'm no longer a counselor. We're just going to dive right into tonight's topic, which is 12 biases that may harm your decision making. One last disclaimer before we get started. I am not your therapist, nor am I a mental health provider. I'm here to share education and tools for awareness. I'm not here to diagnose or treat. If you're struggling, please reach out to a licensed professional. And if you're ever in crisis, please call your local hotline or emergency services. In the US and Canada, you can dial 988. All right. So the first thing we're going to do so we can get this chat hopping and popping is mental health check-in. Let's do a mental health check-in. Welcome in everyone. Tonight we are talking about 12 biases that can secretly shape your decisions and how they connect to your mental health. These biases often affect the way we shop, how we see ourselves, and how we interact with others, and even how we cope with stress. The more we understand them, the more we can make decisions that actually serve us. I'm going to do this live a little differently than normal. It's going to be more educational, and then we'll do some Q&A at the end, okay? So, mental health check-in question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling today? 1 means not great, 10 means amazing. No judgment, just awareness. So, do your mental health check-in, drop a number in the chat for me. On a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling today? I see a 9, I see a 3. I'm with Selena, I'm a 3. I'm definitely a 3 today. I was a 1 a little while ago, but my mood is a little better now because I've had pretty relaxing day. I just took some time for me. So, yeah, so definitely relatable 100%. So for those of you just joining us, we're just doing a mental health check-in on a scale of 1 to 10. How are you feeling today? So there are 12 types of biases that I'm going to talk about today. And this is anchoring bias, authority bias, availability heuristic, bandwagon effect, confirmation bias, Dunning-Kruger effect, endowment effect, false consensus effect, halo effect, illusory correlation, negativity bias, outcome bias, and then that's it, okay? I promise it sounds like a lot, but it's really not. I have this really kind of boiled down to get through as quickly as possible, but if you guys can just keep the chat popping for me, that would help a lot. Right before we get started, I just want to say one thing. If you see my showcase right now, there are some items from Connected Boutique. I have partnered with this brand to start doing live selling for them, and they have put a whole bunch of stuff on sale for me. They totally hooked me up so that I can really kind of get a boost so you guys can get these products. They have a really beautiful palette in there that's $15 right now with a $2 off coupon. If you spend $30 or more, you get free shipping and you still get $6 off. And so, and they also offer free returns. So just have a look because that discount is for only when I'm live right now. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in with anchoring bias. You should be able to still shop and listen if you want, but check it out. Even if you can't grab anything today, check it out. I have several videos on my page about the products. So anchoring bias. Does anybody know what anchoring bias is? If you know what anchoring bias is, put a blue heart in the chat. If you have no idea, put a red heart in the chat. Anchoring bias, what is it? Red hearts, red hearts, red hearts. And I don't know why they are not letting the emojis show up. I think it's because we've had to filter so many people. But anyway, they should be able to show now. Okay, so that's cool because I didn't know either till I started researching for tonight's topic, but I see a whole lot of argumentative fallacies on TikTok right now because of what's happening in the world. So I thought this would be a great topic to cover. So an anchoring bias is when we give too much weight to the first piece of information that we hear. Anchoring bias. We give too much weight to the first piece of information that we hear. So an example of this would be seeing shoes marked down from $150 to $90 feels like a steal, even though they were never worth $150 to begin with. Now, how can we tie this to mental health? Labels can anchor us too. If you were called lazy as a kid, that anchor can follow you into adulthood, even if it's false. And I say this speaking from experience. And it wasn't my family, it was other people, but I used to get called lazy a lot. I wasn't lazy, I was overwhelmed and didn't know where to start. That was just the way my brain functions. So drop a 1 if you've ever bought something just because it looked like a deal. Drop a 1 if you've ever bought something just because it looked like a deal. And you guys are amazing. Look at that. We're already at 2.4K taps. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you so much. I know I have definitely bought something just because it looked like a deal and then had my feelings hurt when I see it somewhere else for even cheaper. And then had my feelings hurt when I found out that it's only made for like a fraction of the cost I paid for it, right? 1. All right. Thank you, Leslie. I appreciate that. What is a label that somebody gave you that you've had to unlearn? If you're comfortable sharing, what is a label someone gave you that you've had to unlearn? Drop it in the chat. Mine has been lazy and airheaded. And it wasn't that I was airheaded, it's that I can't remember shit because it literally goes in one ear and out the other because I struggle with concentration and focus. That's just me. So, let's see. Oh, we already got trolls in here, guys. Isn't that great? We already got trolls in here. I'm just going to mute them. So we'll just mute and block. Bye-bye, troll. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is authority bias. Trusting authority, the authority bias is trusting authority without questioning. How many of you have seen this happening recently? Red heart or blue hearts for yes, I've been seeing authority bias. Red hearts for I have no idea what authority bias is. All right. So, and I know there's a delay, so I'm probably blue hearts. Yep. We're seeing a lot of that, right? So authority bias is when we are trusting an authority without questioning. So we are just trusting them because we believe they are the authority. And an example of this I can think of, and I don't even know if everybody even knows who this person is, but back when I was a kid, there was a talk show with Dr. Laura. And she gave a lot of advice and people thought she was like a psychologist. She had a doctorate in like exercise or physiology or something not even related to psychology. So she was given this, like people trusted her authority because she had doctor in front of her name. Another example would be believing a protein shake works just because a fitness influencer said so. That's another example of authority bias. And how does this tie in to mental health connection? Let's see. In therapy or recovery, people sometimes accept advice that doesn't fit their journey because it came from an expert, right? And we see this because with recovery and mental health, it's not a linear journey. So what works for someone else might not work for someone else, but we have people arguing over, no, 12 steps and abstinence is the only way. No, anybody that does harm reduction through medication-assisted treatment is wrong, right? So that is kind of an example of that because one person believes this and maybe they are an expert in their field. They're given this, but that they're the end all be all. And it really messes with our critical thinking. Oh my God, that's so cute. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Leslie. Thank you for the roses. You guys are so awesome. I appreciate your support because like literally struggling today to get through this. Drop a thumbs up in the chat if you've ever bought something because somebody popular endorsed it or because somebody that you thought was an authority said it was something you should do. Oh, I appreciate you back. That's so awesome. So yeah, drop a thumbs up in the chat if you bought something just because somebody popular endorsed it. Thank you so much. I think I've done it too. And I think to a certain degree, we all have some authority bias because we're conditioned with it from childhood. Well, my mom said, because she said so, so she's right? I think that's another one. And only if you're comfortable in the chat, nobody has to share anything they don't want to share. But what is one time you followed advice that didn't actually work for you? I do it daily too, probably. I just, researching for this, I don't know that I've always been conscientious of it until now. But anyway, thank you. I don't know how to say your name, but okay, thank you, Samika. Welcome in, Wolf. Welcome in. We're just talking about the different kinds of biases and critical thinking and how they tie into mental health. You guys are just killing it in here tonight. All right. Do me a favor, guys, before we move on. The next one's availability heuristic. That's what we're going to discuss next. Before we move on, do me a favor, just hit copy on the share link. You don't have to share it to anybody, but just hit copy on that share link for me. That helps me a lot. You guys are awesome. So we're going to talk about the availability heuristic next. We think the availability heuristic is something when we think something is more common because we can easily recall it. The best example of this I can think of right off the top of my head is the Mandela effect, right? So we kind of no, that's not how I remember it. And sometimes our memory tricks us, right? So you guys are awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so the availability heuristic is when we think something is more common just because we can easily recall it. So an example of this using TikTok would be seeing a TikTok about a shark attack makes us fear swimming through, even though car accidents are more common, right? So that kind of makes sense because we can remember it. Thank you so much. And it's off the top of our head. That is why we now have this fear, just because it keeps, getting pushed in our face. The algorithm is pushing it because a lot of people are talking about it, right? How do we tie this into mental health? Well, trauma can work very much the same way. Our brain can replay worst case scenarios, making us feel unsafe, even when we're totally safe, right? So think about that. I just saw a TikTok about a shark attack and now I'm afraid of swimming. But I could go outside and get into a car accident, and that's more common than me maybe getting attacked by a shark in the ocean. But I just thought about the TikTok I just watched. So it kind of, in a way, can even feed on maybe some fears and anxieties that we already have. Drop a shark in the chat if you have ever avoided something because of one story. Drop a shark in the chat if you've ever avoided something because of a story. I got a flash goal. Let's see what this flash goal is. All right. I'm going to pin this flash goal. All right. And let me see, because now I can't see my chat. There we go. Oh my God. Thank you so much, Leslie. I appreciate you. All right. Do you tend to expect the worst case or best case scenarios? Yes or no? That's just a simple yes or no. Did anybody drop sharks in the chat? I just got to see. No? Okay. All right. Best case scenario. I actually tend to do both, right? So I tend to think, thank you so much. Okay. I just didn't, there it is. Yeah, I tend to do both. So I tend to go, well, the worst that can happen is this, and the best that can happen is this. And I give myself a spectrum. I try not to always go right to the worst, but if I'm feeling a little defeated, I definitely go to worst case scenario with this kind of stuff. So thank you so much for the follow, Christine. I appreciate you. All right. So moving on to the bandwagon effect. Do me a favor, guys, while I'm reading my notes about the bandwagon effect, just tap that screen 5 times for me so we can get a few more likes, okay? So the bandwagon effect, the description is doing something because everyone else is. This, I think, could also be similar or the same as virtue signaling, right? And we see this a lot in marketing, right? We see a lot of companies that do this with marketing. They plan their marketing around whatever is maybe really trending right now on the internet. That's true. I guess I do that too. Oh, no worries. No problem, no problem. Just remember that if you get anything from Connected Boutique, there is a discount. So watch for your coupons in there and see if there's anything you need to claim before you check out, okay? All right, so doing something because everyone else is. An example, this is a great example because I actually saw this, I don't know if it was last year on TikTok or this year, but buying a Stanley Cup because everyone has one. When I was a kid, it was having name brand shoes or having a pager. I know people are probably like, what the heck is a pager? But, that kind of stuff when I was a kid. And when it comes to the mental health connection, how do we tie this in the bandwagon effect into the mental health connection? Well, peer pressure can drive addiction, but positive bandwagons can also help drive recovery, right? So 12 steps might help engage people in recovery groups. And so it can be powerful regardless of what end of the spectrum it's on, but we have to think critically about what end of the spectrum we're going to be on when it comes to the bandwagon effect. Drop a guy with his hand up in the chat if you've ever bought something just because it was trending, or a girl, I don't care, drop a hand up, whatever. If you've ever bought something just because it was trending. And I've never bought anything right away while it was trending because I learned that if you wait a while, the price will go down. But I do have a habit of buying things that have been trending. I'm just usually about 6 months to 8 months behind everyone else. Yep, guilty. I do think I've done it. I just think that because I used to see that the price would go down on stuff when I worked at Walmart, like I just kind of learned to wait a couple months until nobody wants it. I don't have a Stanley Cup either. You know what I do have? I have a Marshall's version of a Stanley Cup. That's what I have. Oh my God, so am I. Skincare and makeup. I don't know if you saw my live last night, Leslie. I showed part of my makeup stash last night and was like, you guys wouldn't believe how ridiculous I am with makeup. I'm on a no-buy right now for anything I do not need. So yeah, what is a trend, if there's ever been one, what is a trend that has actually helped you in life? Oh my God, Medicube, yes. And I have to tell you right now, that stuff is awesome. I'm loving it. I don't even want to use skincare I've had for a while because I'm loving it. And I think once I use up all of the other products I have or, declutter and give them away, I'm going to be straight Medicube girl after this. I think K-Beauty somehow is just better than what we're offered here. So one trend that's actually helped your life. Oh, the first prize set in the showcase, I'll pin it so I can show you because it's really good. It should be in here, but I'll pin it for you. I don't mind. We're just going to take a 30-second break so I can pin this for her. Oh, you know why? I don't see it on my list of products for some reason. Was that it? Nope. Here we go. Right here. This one. It was this one. Or no, actually it was the other one. I'm sorry. That's the one I have. I put the other one that was better. Listen to me ramble about Medicube right now. Don't mind me. There's actually should be 2 sets that are tied to this pinned one, but I cannot find the other one. I wonder if they sold out because I'm not seeing it at all on the list and it won't put sold out products on the list. Yeah, that's wild. Oh, here it is. There we go. Number 63. There you go. All right. So that's the one. Yeah, you screenshotted it. There we go. That's the one. I just pinned it for you. So the next bias we're going to talk about is confirmation bias. And confirmation bias is one I probably think we see the most often. No problem. Is probably the one that we see the most. And that is basically when we only seek information that supports what we already believe. And I think we see this a lot right now with us versus them, red versus blue, conservative versus liberal. And I think like those labels are just actually driving division more than anything. So I think we see this even with media, right? And I think we're finding out also that our media tells us what they think we want to hear, need to hear, should hear, whatever. But then if you look at media outside of the US, sometimes they tell the timeline of our events differently. So I think confirmation bias is probably the most common bias that we're seeing just in general right now. So an example that I can tie into that's a little more simplistic would be reading only 5-star reviews because you already want the product, right? I like to see positive and negative reviews, and I really hate when businesses get mad at people for negative reviews, because negative reviews are most of the time, unless you're brigading a business, are honest opinions or reviews or experiences. And your customers kind of need to know, because what someone else hates might be something they like, that person likes. So, I think that's one way to look at it. When we tie this into mental health, the connection here is it could be dangerous when it comes to self-talk. If you believe I'm not good enough, your brain is going to filter reality to prove I am not good enough. Another example is, have you ever bought a car and all of a sudden now you see that car everywhere you go in town? And you're like, dang, I didn't know so many people owned a Honda or whatever. Like, I think that is kind of a confirmation bias too. Like, oh, it's a great car because now everybody in town has one. That's confirmation bias. And that means like we're seeing what we already believe. And that can really impact the way we critically think. It's actually really dangerous too when it comes outside of mental health, because it's kind of like putting blinders on, right? I am not open to any other opinions. And that can take a toll as well. So drop a 1 if you've ever ignored bad reviews just to justify a purchase. Drop a what? Sorry, guys. Drop a 1 if you've ever ignored bad reviews just to justify a purchase. And is there a positive truth that you would be willing to overlook because of confirmation bias? Only if you're comfortable sharing, but if you are, put it in the chat for me. All right, let's see. Next up is the Dunning-Kruger effect. We're going to talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect. This is another one where I think it's pretty common, especially like in politics and such. And I think we see it more often now than we used to. So has anybody ever heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect? If you've ever heard of it, put an orange heart in the chat. Orange heart in the chat if you've ever heard of Dunning-Kruger effect. We're going to keep it hype up in here. I was trying to get my chat so hype last night, and it was not working. I was trying so badly. But it is what it is. Some days it's good, some days it's off. So, all right, shared with 5 friends. All right, let's see. This was so helpful. Unfortunately, I got to run. All right, thank you. No worries. All right, so the Dunning-Kruger effect. This is when you think you know more than you do. So an example of this would be watching one car repair video and calling yourself a mechanic. Studying a little bit of legal stuff, using ChatGPT, and being convinced that you could be an attorney, right? And how we can tie this into mental health is people sometimes give harmful mental health advice after reading one article. People sometimes give harmful recovery advice. And that is the Dunning-Kruger effect. All right, so I need to be able to see my chat. So if you have ever had somebody give you harmful advice because they read or saw one thing, drop a laughing emoji in the chat. And has there ever been something you thought was simple until you learned more? Yeah, I thought content creation was simple until I started trying to do content creation. So I think for me, that's like my best example. All right, so the next bias we're going to discuss and how it ties to mental health is going to be endowment effect. Welcome in, it's just Nina. The endowment of welcome in, Andrew. We're talking about biases. So the endowment effect. The description of the endowment effect is overvaluing something just because it's yours. Now, this is probably not very nice, but I have seen where people think that something is worth what they paid for it. And I'm not going to out anybody, but I have seen people have a yard sale and they want to charge like $300 for this thing they paid $600 for, but they've had it 10 years. So unless it's still in the box, it's not worth $300. That's kind of an example of what the endowment effect is, right? So another example would be refusing to sell old clothes at a garage sale for a fair price, which is very similar to what I was just saying. And how can we tie this into mental health, right? We do this with coping habits. We hold on to harmful patterns just because they're familiar, just because they're comfortable, just because there's something we're used to. Andrew, you are so much appreciated. Thank you so much for tapping and sharing. I appreciate you so much. Drop a t-shirt if you have ever held on to clothes you never wear. Drop a t-shirt in the chat if you've ever held on to clothes you never wear. And I'm going to see if I can do it. I don't know if I can, but I'll try t-shirt. Nope. I just wrote the word. Whatever. Okay. So me and my dorky laugh, whatever. So t-shirt in the chat if you've ever held on to clothes that you never wear because you think, for whatever reason. Is there a habit that you've ever had trouble letting go of? I have a couple of habits I've had trouble letting go of, but if you've had one, I would love for you to share it in the comments below. A habit I've had trouble letting go of is inhaling flavored air, inhaling flavored air, right? I really I stop and I start and I stop and I start and I feel so much better without it, but then I get stressed out and I'm like, ugh. And in my mind, I have to say, well, this is better than this. And that's why I do it. But I'm really just rationalizing why I'm doing it. All right. So the next bias is the false consensus effect. This is believing that everybody agrees with us. So, and I think this is another thing that we see that is kind of like confirmation bias, right? If I surround myself with a whole bunch of people who believe the earth is flat, when they say the earth is flat and they start justifying it, well, yeah, these people think so I must not be, weird for thinking that or whatever. So, and that's like, but if I don't surround myself with people who are like, nah, the earth is round, I'm kind of giving myself the confirmation bias. So I think that could really go hand in hand with confirmation bias. Another example would be assuming all your friends like the same Netflix show as you, right? And that's silly, but that's like, I'm trying to give the most simplistic examples that I can. So how can a false consensus effect tie into mental health? Well, it leads to isolation when you discover people don't share your views and can fuel stigma too. I also think if you want to take it outside of the mental health spectrum, this can lead to radicalization, right? On either side of the spectrum. That's the closest I'm going to get with that to anything current. All right, so drop a pizza in the chat if you've ever assumed everyone loves something that you also loved. And if there's ever been a time you realize that people thought differently than you, I would love to hear your story. Just drop it in the chat. Thank you so much, guys. You've tapped this out. We're almost at 5K taps. That is incredible. I appreciate it. All right, so the next bias we're going to discuss is the halo effect and how the halo effect ties into mental health. Letting one good trait overshadow anything else. That is the halo effect. And we see this a lot right now. I think this is probably hand in hand with confirmation bias and consensus effect. Like we see this a lot, the halo effect, right? Well, they were still a good person because, whatever, despite XYZ. And in a way, I am a believer that you can do 1,000 things right, and that one thing you do wrong is what everybody remembers, and that's not really fair. But I also think there's a spectrum for that, right? When you have, hi, Holly, when you have repetitive behavior, but people only, repetitive negative behavior, but people only remember the good, that's the halo effect. So assuming a friendly coworker is also reliable when they're always late, or, giving someone grace that they don't necessarily deserve. This is dangerous in mental health because it may cause you to ignore red flags. And God knows I've been guilty of ignoring red flags. If you've been guilty of ignoring red flags, drop a red flag in the chat for me. I'm good, Holly. I'm having like an off day, as you can see. So thank you so much for the heart me. I appreciate that. So yeah, I think the halo effect can definitely lead us to ignore red flags. And I've done that. And then I've been so mad at myself for missing stuff. And, and then it's like, hindsight's always 2020. And we can ignore those red flags because somebody comes across as charming. So they've done all these things wrong, but they're charming. So it's really hard to say no, even though we have red flags slapping us in the face, right? So if you've ever ignored red flags, again, drop some red flags in the chat. Is there a time where you have ever been fooled by the halo effect? Yes, more than once. And what really makes me angry is I'm really good at reading people, and every time I'm like, let's give them the benefit of the doubt, I end up regretting it. So I've definitely been guilty of, the halo effect. All right, number 10, illusory correlation. Illusory correlation. The best way to describe this would be believing that unrelated things are connected. And we see this a lot too. And not saying that all conspiracy theories are wrong, because some have been proven true, but I think conspiracy theories can be kind of where we see this the most. And that's that believing unrelated things are connected. So wearing lucky socks and thinking it made your team win. So superstitious type stuff, right? And how this can tie into how it can impact your mental health is anxiety can often create false patterns. If I don't do X, something bad will happen. And that's the illusory effect. I also think this can tie in sometimes to childhood trauma or religious trauma. And that's not saying that all religions create trauma. Just sometimes culty religions can create trauma, right? Drop a pair of socks in the chat if you've ever had a lucky item. I totally have had I still have I have a lucky item and a comfort item, and I'm 43 years old, and whatever, I don't care who judges me for it. Has anybody ever had a superstition that they grew up with? I was just thinking that also, Holly, that it ties into OCD. I was thinking that same thing. And I did have a superstition, and I literally, when I was younger, used to think because I walked under a ladder, that's why stuff was getting so difficult for me for years and years and years. And I didn't realize that words have power, and I was kind of doing some self-defeating behaviors, and that was the real problem, not the dang ladder. I'm really sorry. All right. And I think I think the illusory correlation can also go hand in hand with negativity bias. I think it's possible to have one or more of these biases in any given situation. It just depends on the situation. All right, so welcome in. So negativity bias. Negativity bias is remembering negatives more than the positives. And I mean, it happens, right? I can tell you 100 things I did wrong today or should have done better today, and I will have a harder time telling you what I did that was good or productive or positive. And I can tell you that I felt like I didn't get enough done today, and I feel like I should have gotten more done today. But then I have to reframe that in my brain and say, you know what? You needed a day of rest. You're exhausted. You're burned out. And you've been a little anxious. So it's okay that you didn't do as much as usual. And it's really hard because I have to repeat that to myself because I'm trying to stop seeing everything so negatively when it doesn't go the way I wanted it to. And the negativity bias, another example would be you get 20 compliments, but you remember the one rude comment. And I used to really struggle with this right here on TikTok. I'd have 15 people say something really nice, and then one person would say something rude. I'd be like, I don't even want to be on TikTok anymore. This is stupid, right? And now I'm just learning, sometimes you just have to ignore it. Engagement's engagement. Thank them for their engagement. Move on, right? And how this can tie into your mental health is this is central to anxiety and depression. Our brains are scanning for threats and we ignore safety cues. So we can sometimes see what we want to see. We have 20 people telling us, oh, you're so strong. You're so resilient. I'm so proud of you. But you have one person being like, shut up, loser. And that's the one that sticks with you. And that's the negativity bias. And that can really impact your mental health and how you have to try to look at it. Welcome in, G.I. Joy. And how you have to kind of look at it is, one person out of 20 is saying something rude. The ratio of good to bad is better, right? And even if the ratio was reversed, that doesn't make all those people right. Even if the ratio was reversed and it was one person saying something good and 19 people wrong, doesn't make it true. You contacted the White House and the Secretary of the VA. Oh, that's awesome. That's really awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Let's see. Welcome in, Devo. So drop any color heart in the chat if you've ever fixated on one bad comment online. If you've ever fixated on one bad comment online, drop a heart in the chat for me. Thank you so much for tapping out that live. I appreciate it. I really do. And if you're comfortable sharing, drop one thing you're proud of in the chat. It doesn't have to be anything super special. It could be I just woke up or I had a good day or anything. One thing that you're proud of in the chat. And then we're going to talk about the last bias. The last bias that we're going to discuss tonight is the outcome bias. So the outcome bias is when we judge a decision only by the result. So an example of this would be speeding to work and calling it smart because you didn't get a ticket. Or I'm trying to think of like another one. It isn't a crime if you get away with it, right? Which I guess is very similar to the example that I just gave. But struggling with that word tonight. I'm trying not to say as much. Mental health, how this ties into mental health is recovery setbacks. People sometimes will say, I relapsed, so I'm a failure, or I'm relapsed, so just F it. I'm going to do whatever. I started the Joy Project and I'm giving ceramics to people, letting them know when they are thought of. That's really awesome. I love that. That sounds amazing. So yeah, recovery setbacks are when people say, I relapsed, so I am a failure, instead of valuing the progress that led up to it, right? And that's harm reduction is what that is. But some people still struggle to grasp the concept of harm reduction, right? Anything that someone is reducing is still getting them closer to stopping. So if you've ever taken a risk that worked out, even though it wasn't smart, drop a red heart in the chat. And then, has there ever been a time you made a good choice, even if the outcome wasn't perfect? I know for myself, I have had a little bit of both, I guess you could say. So let's see. All right. So that is the 12 biases. We're going to do a quick recap. We talked about bias scripts, anchoring bias, authority bias, availability heuristics, bandwagon effect, confirmation bias, Dunning-Kruger effect, endowment effect, false consensus effect, halo effect, illusory correlation, negativity bias, and outcome bias. So we covered that all. We covered it really quickly. Look at that, 40 minutes of me just yammering. Welcome in, Carrie. Welcome in. So we just covered 12 biases that can influence the way we shop, love, work, and even care for our mental health. And what's really important to remember here is that awareness is the first step to making better choices. We can make better choices if we think critically and if we remember that we need to have our eyes open, right? We don't want to just walk around with blinders on. We want some discernment. Biases, having them, we've all done it. We all have them. We've all fallen, into some of these biases before, but it doesn't mean you're broken. It just means that you're human. But when you notice them, you take back control. So if you think that a bias has affected you, I would love for you to share in the chat.